You're listening to a Cult Talk Network podcast.
File access granted.
Welcome, all you believers, skeptics, idealists, and all those questioning the world around them. I'm Ty.
And I'm Bailey.
And this is Cult Talk Conspiracy. Today, I think this is the first time we have yet to focus an episode on just a single person.
Yeah.
We have not done that yet. It's kind of like a highlight episode, I suppose. We're highlighting someone.
Yes. I'm super excited. This guy is crazy.
Yeah, I read about this guy back when I was doing research for Men in Black. His name came up a couple of times. Didn't really think a lot of it. And originally, I was going to do endless elevators. That was where this began. And he is like very tied into that theory. So I started reading a little bit about him, and I was like, well, I just might as well do a whole episode because he's a very interesting guy, and he's pretty prolific when it comes to conspiracy theories and that world.
I'm super excited. I did just a little bit of research just to figure out what I was getting myself into. And anytime we talk about the 1940s and all the craziness that happened during that time period, I get so excited. And, you know, a lot of his work really, from what I understand, a lot of his work came from that time period. I'll find out more today here. I'm just so excited. I can't wait. He was that's when he was active, was around that time period. And he had his hands in a little bit of everything. He was doing his own thing, but also there's some ties to him and some other recognizable names we'll get to later. But he's a very interesting guy, and he's not very well known, but he's, like I said, he's pretty prolific. So I thought it was just kind of just desserts to maybe highlight him a little bit, and maybe let people look into him a little more because he's a pretty interesting guy. Oh yeah,
and I was really proud of this file I wrote for him after I got done reading it. I was like, man, that was really good. So I'm pretty happy with this and excited to tell the world who is Richard Shaver, because man, he's just an interesting guy. Richard Sharp Shaver is his full name.
He's a sharp shaver. Did he keep a clean
shaver,
shave?
Yeah.
Did he keep a clean shave? I wonder. I need to know now.
He's a pretty interesting dude. So, so this right here, we're coming off of, what did we do last?
We did Parallel Universes.
Parallel Universes we just wrapped up on, and we're getting ready to go into the final segment of that here in a couple weeks.
And you did mention
Bailey's.
Yeah, I can't wait to be. I love it. I'm so excited for the encounters portion of this. But y'all, I'm doing something a little easier the next couple of episodes because that's we're talking about physics and quantum mechanics and string theory and it's a lot. But you had even mentioned in Parallel Universe how proud you were of this episode. So
I'm very excited. I'm happy that this is for the finally do an episode where I don't talk about white supremacists. So that's pretty fun because
that's great.
I was getting kind of tired of talking about white supremacists and looking at that stuff.
Oh my god!
So this gets a little away from that. There is like a touch I'll point on in the end of his work, kind of ties into that, but it's not anything of his accord. So I'll kind of just touch on that. May mention at the end, but. I think without further ado, I think we can go ahead and unseal file 013 and answer the question, who is Richard Shaver? So you said you kind of looked into a little bit about him.
Yes.
Because like I said, I mentioned it last episode. People heard. So I'm sure people have at least been curious of who this guy is. So you read a little bit about him?
I did. I really had to limit my research because, like I said, as soon as I found out that he was, big and about during, the 1940s when a lot of that was happening, I really just wanted to dive in deep and find out what he did. I know he is an author of many, many books.
Not so much books, but he's an author. Yeah, he is an author, but he didn't really publish. He published his stuff in one spot, and it wasn't necessarily like his own books. But we'll get into that. But so over the last 6 months, we've discussed various figures who could be considered prolific. We've mentioned Kenneth Arnold, John Keel, guys like those, who all actually kind of get brought up in this at certain points. So there are guys like that you have touched on in the past here on Cult of Conspiracy that you are going to hear their names again.
Nice.
But someone we have not really touched on is a man by the name of Richard Sharp Shaver. I first came across him when I was researching Men in Black back in November. But it was in passing, and I really didn't fully dive into the extent that he actually had. I guess the actual reach that he had on the world of conspiracies. I didn't really reach on that. I just mentioned I remember seeing his name back in November, and I took note of something in the Men in Black episode. I put it on my little note side of my sheet, but I never really brought him up. Now, since that episode, we've read into a lot of other things, and this episode we are going to focus solely on answering the question, who is Richard Shaver? Because I had seen his name in passing. I didn't know who he was, but I think it's someone that if you're interested in conspiracies, this is definitely someone you should know of. Now, not a lot is known about Richard or in his early life. There's not a whole lot of record of things he did as a child or growing up. He pretty much lived a normal life. He was born in 1907 in Burnswick, Pennsylvania. And like I said, he had a mostly normal life. Nothing really was, I guess, of note, because there's not a lot on his early life. So I'm assuming pretty normal life, pretty uneventful. The picture of who Richard Shaver really is begins to develop in the 1930s at the height of the Great Depression. He found himself employed along America's Rust Belt in a Ford automotive factory.
Oh.
Now, this factory, he began to notice like strange occurrences. He started just picking up on things, energies, things like this, just weird things that he was noticing.
Okay.
Now, these strange occurrences all centered around a welding gun, his welding gun. It's a welding gun used for welding things together. While welding, his welding gun was able to allow him to hear the thoughts of his coworkers. He was able, when he was welding the whole time, he was able to hear everyone around him, what they were thinking while he was welding. The welding gun also allowed him to receive telepathic record of horrific torture sessions at the hands of evil beings on human hosts. So this welding gun, for whatever reason, was a conduit for him to be able to receive telepathic messages from his coworkers, as well as these evil beings who were torturing humans.
You have my attention.
These evil beings would kind of become the basis of a lot of his work. These evil beings, they lived in the center of the earth in these deep caverns. Now, not long after experiencing this stuff, Richard would quit his job at the Ford automotive plant, leave the welding gun behind, I assume, and he would begin to live on the streets. He'd become a hobo.
Yeah.
Now, that happened in, I think, early 1930, because there's pretty much no record of Richard Sharp Shaver between 1932 and 1940. There's an 8-year gap where he was supposedly, or what we know, was just living on the street. And there's just little spotty records. A man by the name of Michael Barkin. Now, Michael Barkin is a guy that I'll probably dive into again at a certain point, because he does appear to be pretty influential in the world of conspiracy. He specializes in political and government conspiracies, and he's actually a professor of political science at the Syracuse University.
How far is Syracuse from here? Does he do an online class? Because I'd love to go.
Syracuse? I don't know. Syracuse? I don't know. I didn't look at what state that is. I should know.
I'm going to look at this. So exciting.
Barkin was a critic of Shaver and the conspiracy theories he would come to claim. And as such, claimed that some of the spotty period that people don't really know a lot about Richard Shaver between 1932 and 1940, he claims it was because Richard was actually hospitalized in a psych ward.
Yeah,
that time period.
Yeah,
that's what Michael Barkin claims. Now, Have you ever heard of the magazine Amazing Stories?
Here's the thing. I feel like we've talked about it a little bit before, but I can't
I
recall.
think we have. I think we mentioned it again back in the Men in Black. But Amazing Stories is a magazine that was very, very big in the early 20th century. It focused a lot on UFOs, because it was around that time where it was all this stuff was really becoming popular.
Right.
You had the writings of H.G. Wells, all this, Ray Bradbury.
Yeah.
And this magazine would kind of collect short stories or paranormal accounts. And they had really, really nice covers. That's one thing I think most people will recognize Amazing Stories. If you go and look online, they all had these like beautiful painted covers of alien beings and UFOs and all kinds of odd things. And they were just really pretty, robots,
nice,
all sorts of science fiction stuff. Amazing Stories was originally launched in April 1926 by Hugo Gernsback. It is the very first magazine devoted solely to science fiction. In addition to this, the magazine is often credited for the beginnings of pulp fiction and fan fiction. Its early success saw the publication of Fantastic Stories, which was a fantasy-based spin-off. It was so popular they had to make 2 magazines.
Nice.
Many fans of the magazine would write in with their own stories and even make contact with other fans.
Nice.
So it kind of created this like fan culture. It was one of the first magazines to do that. So they'd print like letters. If you wrote in Amazing Stories, I've seen a UFO. You'd write that in. They would print it in their magazine, and then other people would reach out to you, and it created this whole network.
That's awesome.
This is really the early origins of sci-fi fan culture, as it allowed these people with similar interests. It gave them a spot to connect and discuss amongst themselves. And one of those people was Richard Shaver. In 1943, he would write a letter to the magazine and describe an ancient language he had discovered. The language was what he referred to as Mantong. Mantong. Mantong.
Okay.
And he believed it was the source of all human language.
Okay.
Mantong, it contained a hidden meaning within each of its sounds, which would hide secret meanings, and if properly decoded, it would be like secret messages. You could use this alphabet to go into words, and you would, the way certain letters were placed, you would be able to find a secret message.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, this letter found itself on the desk of magazine editor Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer is another big part of this story. He's kind of a cohort, I guess, with Richard Shaver as these events unfold. Now, Palmer, he received the letter, he read it, and he applied that formula, the formula that Richard Shaver laid out of Mantong. He applied that formula to several words, and he began to believe there was some truth to this. He was able to put words together and like, there's actually stuff hidden in this. Now, Shaver included the alphabet as it was interpreted in Mantong. And I'll go through the whole 26-letter alphabet in Mantong as described by Richard Shaver.
Okay, awesome.
So here we're going to go over all the letters in the alphabet of Mantong.
Nice.
It's very similar to our alphabet, just the letters have different meanings. A, anytime you see A, that is animal. Anytime you see the letter B, that is B, B-E. C is C, S-E-E. D is a harmful energy generated by the sun. E is energy. F is fertile. G is generate. H is human. I is I, as in me, nice. You, I. J also means generate, so J and G are the same thing.
Okay.
K is kinetic. L is life. M is man. N is child. O is orifice. P is power. Q is quest. R is horror. S is a sun, as in the sun. T is a beneficial energy, the opposite of D. D is bad, T is good.
Oh, okay.
U is you, Y-O-U.
Mhm.
V is vital. W is will. X is conflict. Y is Y, W-H-Y.
Mhm.
And Z is zero. Now, apparently, if you take this formula and you apply to certain words, you'll be able to get a hidden messages or phrases, depending on how the words are structured. I guess is what is the basis of man tongue. Now, Palmer wrote back to Richard and asked where he had discovered man tongue. Richard was quick to respond with an incredibly detailed account of evil, inhuman underground monsters dwelling in caves beneath the Earth's surface known as Deros. D-E-R-O-S. This also had a header on it that this was a warning to all mankind.
Okay.
Was the header of this letter that he responded with.
See, I knew there was a reason, always a reason that I did not like caves. I just knew.
Well, you don't only have to stay in caves to encounter Deros. Now, although these creatures live beneath us, they would periodically make trips to the surface. It is then they would kidnap humans, take them to their lair, and just like his welding gun showed him, they would perform horrific experiments on them.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
With a welding gun? Is that why?
No, the welding gun showed him these.
Oh, okay.
When he was using his welding gun at the Ford plant, that was the visions he was getting. He kept getting these visions of people being tortured, and they were actually the visions of the Deros torturing their human subjects.
I'm not going to lie to you. All I can think about is the machine gods from 40K right now. Like I have to, like, I listened to lore, and that was the first thing that popped into my head. I'm sorry. Okay, back. Anyway.
Now, Palmer was so fascinated by the information that he reworked the letter. You know, the letter that Shaver wrote, this highly detailed letter. He went ahead and reworked it into a fictional account. Basically, made it into a short story.
Okay.
And he published it in Amazing Stories. This interaction between Palmer and Shaver would be the catalyst for what would become one of Amazing Stories' most valuable properties.
Oh, wow.
The Shaver Mysteries. Basically, this would kick off a trend between Richard Shaver and Ray Palmer kind of collaborating a little bit using the mythos that Shaver claimed to have discovered, and Palmer would construct these into these fictional accounts of interactions with these beings in this world.
Nice. Cool.
In March 1945, Richard Shaver wrote the novella I Remember Lumaria. This was published in Amazing Stories to a massive response that saw the magazine completely sell out. So he wrote that little short story and it sold out Amazing Stories. Couldn't get a copy. It was wildly popular.
Nice.
Now, this novella tells the story of the Deros. The Deros, actually what that means is detrimental robots, is what that's short for.
Oh, gosh.
Now, Shaver noted these were not robots in the mechanical sense. They weren't like, silver men with mechanized limbs. He referred to them as robots because of their behavior. They had a total lack of feeling, empathy, emotion, nothing. They were just these evil beings that had no other purpose but to be evil. There was no other motivation. So they were originally an advanced race of humans that fled to caverns under the earth due to harmful radiation from the sun. That would be D. D is the harmful radiation that comes from the sun, or at one point was harmful to humans.
Yeah.
So the Deros, now a lot of people speculate these were actually Atlanteans.
Oh!
The Deros were originally Atlanteans, and they fled under the earth to these caverns. That's what happened to Atlantis. They got bombarded with this energy D.
Interesting.
and that would be the origin of Diros. Now, I couldn't find anything that actually confirmed that in Shaver's writings. From what I was able to find, he always referred to it as an ancient race.
Okay.
But a lot of people speculate, and it would come in later in his story. So people kind of draw this conclusion that maybe the Diros were initially Atlanteans. Now, it was here that over time, these humans de-evolved into the Diros. Although some did not change, and there still remained a hierarchy. There were Diros, and then there were these like sophisticated, kind of intelligent. They kept a lot of their original, I guess, origin.
Okay.
And they were called Tyros. T-E-R-E-O-S. So you had Diros, who were these just emotionless, mindless, evil, kind of like, I guess, the slave race of this population. Then you had the Tyros, who were the hierarchy. They were the brains, the operation. Now, not only were the Diros coming to the surface to kidnap humans, and according to Shaver, this was by the thousands. These weren't just like randomly every now and then they would do it. They were like by the thousands kidnapping people. So it would come in later. We'll talk about it later. But they would do this because they were actually harvesting humans for meat. We were their food source. But they were also using leftover technology from their past. This was an advanced race, according to Shaver, that the Diros evolved or de-evolved from. But they were still able to use some of the technology they had left over from when they were an advanced race. They were able to spy on us and also project thoughts and voices into our minds. So they were able to still, like, even though they weren't on the surface, they were able to somehow tap in to the surface and spy on us. So they're watching our every move, and they're also able to put bad thoughts into our minds.
I don't like this at all.
Now, much like John Keel, his idea of the ultra-terrestrials being an explanation for all sorts of mysterious phenomena. We've touched on ultra-terrestrials a lot, and we keep saying we're going to do an episode. Maybe we will. We'll try here soon. So John Keel invented or had that idea. I don't say invented, but he had the idea of ultra-terrestrials being this cover-all explanation for everything. Well, Richard Shaver's idea of Diros found them as the explanation for everything bad. Diros could be they could be used as an explanation for you injure yourself, you get sick, plane crashes, and even natural disasters. These Diros were, if something bad happened, it was a fault of the Diros, is what John Shaver used them at. Because they had all this technology where they're able to manipulate our minds and stuff. So if a plane crashes, MH 370, maybe Diros got into the pilot's mind and made him crash the plane. It's just how Richard Shaver structured them.
Maybe.
You trip and fall at work is because a Diros clouds your mind and you didn't see this thing in front of you, fell, you broke your ankle. Diros.
What about natural disasters, though? Is that more?
I'm also wondering if that's a product of their like advanced technology, if they're able to manipulate surface weather, or maybe they cause an earthquake or something like that. I'm wondering if that's what he was implying there.
Nice.
So not only did the story sell at the magazine, but it also spurred not hundreds, but according to Ray Palmer, tens of thousands of people to respond to the story between 1945 and 1949. These responses were from people claiming to have experienced the exact same things that Richard had written of. Now, notable responses were of a woman who claimed that she located an endless elevator in Paris, France. Now, upon discovering this endless elevator, she was taken to the underground caverns of the Diros. There, she was tortured and sexually assaulted until she was miraculously freed by a good Tiro, a remorseful Tiro who freed her and let her escape.
Interesting that the Diros and the Tiros kind of seem to be intentionally working against each other. Like
That's kind of what it seems like.
Yeah.
It seems like there is like a kind of a clash between the two classes there.
That was one thing that I had read in the little biography that I read, was that the Diros were extremely brutal to the women.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they were. Yeah, that was kind of a lot of people have noted that being a big part of Richard Shaver's writings was that these Diros were very sexually and violently aggressive toward women in particular. So a lot of people have noted that being a big part of his mythology he built for the mythology of the Diros that he either created or just was relaying. Another response came from a man by the name of Fred Chrisman. Now, Fred Chrisman, we talked about back in File 005 when we did the Men in Black Begins.
Nice.
Fred Chrisman is the foreman of Harold Dahl. Harold Dahl was the man who claimed he had the first UFO sighting. It was where the UFOs came over that lake and sprayed the black dust and killed his dog and made him and his son sick. So Fred Chrisman was his boss, and he had claimed to have had some sort of interaction with Diros. But Fred Chrisman and Howard Dahl are two men who have been over the years kind of outed as these just like attention-seeking hoax guys. They would kind of bandwagon on anything they thought had some weight to it. That way they could try to get their names tied in with it. Now, a large number of people also claimed that they were not exactly encountering Diros, but being affected by the technology that Richard Shaver described. They would say they were hearing voices from underground. They'd be in their basement, hear voices under the floor, or they would be thinking things that they had no intention of thinking. They would be, have a sudden urge to do something they don't want to do. So they were claiming that these were, of course, an effect of this mind-altering technology that the Diros had in possession. Some people also did say they were encountering Diros, in the caves or out wandering alone. They would spot a Diros or see one escaping underground, something like that, or coming up from the ground. So there were people that were reporting that kind of stuff. Now, as I said, this was a very popular subject for Amazing Stories. So much so that between 1945 and 1948, 75% of Amazing Story issues contained mentions of Shaver mysteries, and sometimes whole issues were just dedicated to these.
Holy crap!
That's how popular it was. It was also estimated that the Shaver mysteries contributed to an increase of nearly 180,000 monthly circulated issues of the magazine.
Wow.
So these were insanely popular for the time. People were just fascinated by these. Now, although these stories were considered successful, there were as many detractors as there were supporters, of course. The Shaver mysteries were known by some as the Shaver hoax.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Of course, with everything, there's going to be two sides of the coin. And detractors noted Richard Schiff from Hard Science, which a lot of his early stuff did depict, was very historical based. He would mention, events from the past, things like that. But these eventually over time turned into basically big, overblown space opera adventure stories. Kind of just became these tales, these adventure stories. Whereas originally they were these like scientific depictions or historical depictions of the society that he believed to have existed. Now, others claimed that Richard's stories were a result of paranoid schizophrenia. Now, there was actually a pretty heavy letter writing campaign put on by people to Amazing Stories to get them to stop publishing these stories, because they were a lot of people. These were, I'd say, more along lines like mental health professionals or
Yeah.
People like that were like writing and telling amazing stories to stop putting these stories out because they were contributing to this like paranoia, this like group schizophrenia.
Yeah.
They were claiming that the people that believed in shaver mysteries are the same people who, my neighbor's dog told me to kill the president kind of stuff. So they were saying like, hey, you're just contributing to this harmful thing that's taking place in our country. And again, not to harp on it, this was Cold War era.
Oh,
we talked about it many times. Paranoia, powerful thing.
Yeah.
And people were very concerned that these amazing stories, shaver mysteries, were adding to that paranoia.
Oh, I could see it definitely given into the mass hysteria that, was kind of, I hate to say was going on because like I genuinely think there was stuff in the sky during that period.
Right.
But anyway, nevertheless, some of that was going on. I'm just like jotting down everything like violence towards women, unwarranted thoughts, hearing voices, seeing things. And like, I'm just kind of like, this sounds like, it sounds like mental illness to me, but also like.
That's why a lot of people have kind of, in recent years or in years past, people have just claimed that, Ray Palmer was exploiting a man with severe schizophrenia for financial gain.
Yeah.
That's kind of what a lot of people have kind of come to here in later years, that Ray Palmer and Amazing Stories were, found this guy who was clearly suffering from mental disorder, and they just exploited him because they were making a shit ton of money at this time. They said there was an increase of 180,000 copies of the magazine had anyone that had shaver mysteries in it. So these were that was kind of the thought. So people were writing in like these massive writing campaigns from people who were legitimately concerned about Richard Shaver and his mental well-being, pleading to Ray Palmer to stop feeding into this.
Right. And it doesn't help that he went missing for 8 years and it's speculated he was in a psychiatric hospital.
Yeah. Now, that claim, of course, Michael Barkin, he would say that because Richard was asked where he got all this information from, and according to him, he experienced all of it. He was being held by against his will by Deros during the 1930s. And, Michael Barkin would say, he wasn't being held in some underground cavern. He was being held in a mental institute at that time. So Richard could have just been, delusional and thinking that he's being held by these underground evil beings, these robots, when it's actually these mental health employees, mental institution employees, holding him for psychiatric issues.
Yeah.
Now, in 1948, Amazing Stories ceased publication of all Shaver mystery content.
When?
1948.
1948.
So they let this go on for, I believe, 5 years. They were milking this for 5 years of just just 3 years. They were going for 3 years. 3 years between 1945 and 1948. They still in that 3 year period, 75% of all Amazing Stories content was Shaver mystery.
Wow! Holy crap! Did the publication even survive?
It's still around today. I think it didn't last much longer after that. It kind of floated around. Like, I think it's been in and out of publication because the name has a lot of value to it. Amazing Stories. It's like one of those nostalgia things. And I think the covers are a huge part of it. Because if you ever just go on Google and just look up Amazing Stories in the image searches, and there's some just beautiful artwork.
I'm getting ready to text my oddities dealer and be like, "Hey, I need an Amazing Stories magazine."
Oh, I would love an Amazing Stories to frame on my wall up there with my Simpsons stuff. Yeah, I would love to get one of those.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm texting my oddities.
I'll have to look on that. I was wanting to see if there's like an art book, because you find like those art books that are collections. Like Evan has like one of like Heavy Metal magazine where it's all the covers like that. I'd like to find one Amazing Stories. It's really cool artwork. But yeah, I think I don't know exactly. I think it's still around. It's like a kind of like a more of like a premium thing now.
Yeah,
you have to get it. Yeah, you can get it in print or probably digital.
Yeah,
but this I don't know if it's the original publicators. It's probably just people that have bought the name Amazing Stories, because it does have a lot of value. Even in the 1980s, Steven Spielberg had a anthology show
Oh wow.
based on amazing stories,
Oh
short stories.
wow.
I think it only lasts a couple of seasons, but it was one of those anthology shows, like Tales from the Crypt or whatever, where it was just these little mini movies based on stories. But yeah, Steven Spielberg was a big fan of amazing stories.
Nice.
Now, many speculated that this was due to the writing campaigns we spoke about earlier, pleading for an end of the mysteries and to stop fueling paranoia and exploiting this man who a lot of people believe just had mental issues. But Ray Palmer, he had a more ominous explanation. According to Ray Palmer, he had stopped publishing because of sinister outside forces, is what he claimed when he was asked about why he had quit publishing Shaver Mysteries. Now, I will say I didn't cover too much on it. Even though he stopped publishing in Amazing Stories, the Shaver Mysteries, Ray Palmer would continue to try and exploit the Shaver Mysteries and Richard Shaver in later years. He would, I think he produced another magazine that one of the first issues was a Shaver Mystery. He even tried to get just a dedicated Shaver Mysteries magazine published. So even though he stopped at Amazing Stories, he was still trying elsewhere. So the sinister outside forces thing is a little odd to me, because it's well, if you're getting threatened by these forces, why are you still trying to do it? But I don't know. That was what he claimed. He claimed it was sinister outside forces is what made him stop producing it.
Interesting.
But possibly the real reason as to why it ended was simply because the Shaver Mysteries had ran their course. Sales and Amazing Stories had steadily declined. 1949 was the peak, or 1948 was the peak of the Shaver Mystery phenomena. It even got mentioned, I think, in Life magazine. Which Life magazine was the big magazine.
Oh yeah,
around that time. It even was mentioned in there. But sales and Amazing Stories was declining. Not only just because of Shaver Mysteries, but just that brand of pulp fiction, that sci-fi pulp stuff, was just kind of running its course in general. So sales were declining. The Shaver Mysteries, however, had a tremendous effect on sci-fi and conspiracy culture. Calling back to a name that came up a lot on Cult Talks Conspiracy, Mr. Kenneth Arnold.
Yep.
In 1947, Kenneth kicked off the UFO craze when he reported his sighting of a fleet of flying discs. In 1983, another Cult Talk Conspiracy regular, Mr. John Keel, wrote an article titled "The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers." This article details that Richard Shaver's stories described that Deros possess spaceships. In response to that, Ray Palmer, who was the editor of Amazing Stories, commissioned artwork for the cover of the magazine, which featured these spaceships as a fleet of silver flying discs.
Oh my gosh.
Now, this is a full year before Kenneth Arnold reported the exact same thing. Now, Keel doesn't believe that Kenneth Arnold, was mistaken or, recollecting. Keel actually believes that Shaver and Palmer somehow predicted that UFOs were coming. That was a prediction, not a, I guess I don't know what you'd even call it. It wasn't they made them up. They were actually predicting this was happening.
It was
what Kenneth saw was a
bona fide fact of this is what's to come.
Was actually what they predicted. So
wow, okay, that's a lot to take in. Wow.
That was a full year before Kenneth Arnold made his report.
And no one please forgive the phrase, but no one in their right mind would even think that is coming. So it's that's so just far out from left field, and the fact that the artwork matches and just
well, too, it's weird that he just described them as spaceships or space rockets.
Yeah,
he described them as space rockets. And Ray Palmer and the artist he had commissioned came up with these silver flying discs as a depiction. So
that's amazing. You know how sometimes maybe I'm just crazy, but sometimes you get that feeling it was like sometimes you get that feeling like maybe I should just like do this, and then you find out later that that was actually like the right thing to have done, but you wouldn't have done it unless like you like had actually thought about it. It feels like something like that has actually happened, and I don't know what you guys call it. I don't know if you call it intuition, if you call it faith.
Intuition,
Like I don't know.
Intuition.
Oh man, that would mean that the Deeros are really in our head then. Oh my god.
It could be. It could be that they were getting some kind of signal from the Deeros of what these ships looked like, and UFOs are actually Deeros, which would play into like the what they call those, it's the theory of, well, it's Hollow Earth. The UFOs are from the center of the Earth, not necessarily from outer space.
I'm not very familiar with Hollow Earth, but that sounds right to me. I'm not too keen on what the actual definition of that theory is.
Now, in addition to the possible UFO, I guess, origin, Richard is also credited as bringing the endless elevator phenomena to light. This being the phenomena that finding a mysterious elevator in a building, oftentimes an abandoned building, that would go down far past the restrictions of the building they're attached to.
Mm-hmm.
It is believed that these are the means of which Deeros travel to the surface, these mysterious underground elevators. Now, like I said, this was originally where this whole thing originated from. I was going to do an episode on the endless elevators, but it's so tied in with Richard Shaver. Yeah. It just kept bringing me back to him. Because a lot of people do claim that this is the origin, that the Shaver mysteries are where this idea originated. And you even do, if you go back, the lady that wrote in to Amazing Stories, following the I Remember Lumeria novella, claim that she encountered one of these, and that's what took her to the underground caverns where the Deeros experiment on her.
Does she claim to have been? She does claim to have been inside one of these endless elevators.
Yeah, yeah. That's what she was in a building in Paris, France. She discovered one of these endless elevators. It took her to the caverns where she was captured by the Deeros. So
oh my gosh,
that's what she claimed. Now, in pop culture, the Shaver mysteries have had influence in literature, with several novels utilizing ideas from them. There's a Japanese horror film called Marbito, which directly references Deeros.
Oh, wow.
Dungeons and Dragons even features a race of evil underground dwarves called Duros, Derros. So add an extra R in there.
I know what my next character is going to be.
Now, these creatures behave exactly like Shaver's Deeros. In recent times, Jordan Peele's 2019 film Us. Have you ever seen that?
I did not see it, but it's
a pretty good one.
I've watched some reviews of it and whatnot. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch it because the premise of that movie actually scared the shit out of me. Like, I'm gonna be honest.
A lot of people have compared it to a modern interpretation of the Shaver mysteries.
Oh, damn it! Now I'm gonna have to watch it. Damn it!
It's a good one. I just
don't want to be scared.
People like to give Jordan Peele shit, but Us and Nope are pretty fucking awesome movies.
Yeah.
You can say what you will about Get Out, but Us and Nope are badass flicks. I deal with some cool shit. But a lot of people, take that movie as being a modern interpretation of the Shaver mysteries, which does make sense. The premise is pretty similar with these underground beings, and it's a really good movie, but that is like a modern day take on Shaver mysteries, some people believe.
All right, I'm watching it. We're gonna have to watch it. I'm gonna get scared, but I'm gonna watch it.
Now, despite the influence of the Shaver mysteries on pop culture and conspiracy theorists, after Amazing Stories ceased running their stories, Richard Shaver himself fell into obscurity. But that didn't stop him. The Shaver mysteries were not simply stories to the man who they were named after. These were to him his actual beliefs. Wow. You can say what you will about Ray Palmer, but to Richard Shaver, this was real. This is real stuff. Now, Richard Shaver spent the rest of his life seeking out evidence of the ancient advanced civilization he wrote about. And in 1960, he found it, or at least he claimed to. He claimed to have found it.
Oh my God. Speak more now.
He found what he called rock books.
Okay.
These were not books about Dwayne The Rock Johnson, sadly. These were actually, for years, he would photograph these findings. These pictures, to some, are just pictures of rocks. Just weirdly lit pictures of rocks.
Okay.
But you would be wrong to assume so, according to Richard Shaver, because these were actually highly detailed historical archives from the lost race of Atlantis,
Oh.
created by a high-tech laser-like device.
A high-tech laser-like device. Okay.
Yes. From
Very interesting.
Yeah. So basically, if you look up Richard Shaver and the rock books, you'll find these pretty nice pictures of rocks, and he will go in and he'll be like, he'll see grooves, and he'll be like, that's a ship. Here's some people, and this is actually a record of a war that took place.
Wow.
And he'll go and he'll highlight it, and he'll yeah. And if you look at them, it's one of those things where you're like, I can see it after you've drawn it on Eric. It's a rock, but he'll find the stuff. He'll be like, that's a ship, that's a person. Here's a gun. These people are shooting at the end. It's just like it's just a rock with a bunch of shapes on it. But he'll go through and he'll highlight the stuff that he sees in them.
But think about it though. Like, if you look at a written language that you've never seen before, it's not going to mean anything to you until it's deciphered.
Right. Exactly.
Also, like, I think I think humans have been around way, way longer than what we suspect that they have been. So, like, for them to, like, have that sort of technology, like, there's no way. If humans have been around, like, since the beginning, let's say, since that absolute very beginning, there's no way we didn't discover, different types of technologies and different ways to do things. So I'm not saying that I buy into it. I'm saying I need to know more about this. But
now, at one point, he even ran what he called the Rock Book Library, where you could write to him, and in turn, he would send you a rock with a detailed letter describing what the meaning of the rock is.
Okay.
But aside from a few people who corresponded with these, with him about these findings, for the most part, the rock books never really gained much attention. In 1975, Richard Shaver would pass away in his home. An undisclosed reason. I couldn't find what exactly the cause of his death was, but he passed away in his home in 1975 in Alabama, I believe. And that was pretty much the end. Or so you'd think.
Ooh.
But there's still just a little more to the story. Just a little more.
Okay. Makes sense.
Years after his passing, an artist by the name of Brian Tucker stumbled upon Shaver's rock book photography. And he would create an exhibit in honor of Richard Shaver at the California Institute of the Arts. This exhibit would also find itself on display at the Santa Monica Museum of Art, as well as the world-famous Guggenheim Gallery.
Wow.
This exhibit would join a traveling art exhibit called Create and Be Recognized.
Wow.
And finally, in 2004, his art would tour across the United States, featuring, he was the featured part of that exhibit, his rock book photography, which people in the years since, his photography has actually became very highly regarded in the world of outside art, is what it's called, outsider art. And the Richard Shaver rock book photographs are very highly regarded in that world. So that's kind of became where his infamy came from in the past, is Shaver Mysteries, and the later years where he developed these rock book photographs. And that is who Richard Shaver is. That's Richard Shaver.
That's awesome.
He's a author, a conspiracy theorist, I guess an historian, if you want to think of it that way.
A photographer? Even?
He's a photographer, an artist. He's a little bit of everything.
That's amazing.
That's Richard Shaver.
That is awesome. Oh, wow. Ty, well done. Very well done.
Thank you.
Blew that out of the water. Oh my gosh. I need to go and look at some of these rock book photos because now I'm very, very interested.
They're pretty interesting. Like I said, it's a lot of times just very well lit pictures of rocks, which I think is where a lot of this comes from, is because the time period which he was doing this, it probably wasn't a very common thing for people to be photographing this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just interesting. So, you'll find the pictures where he's like drawing out what he's seeing on there, and like it makes sense. If you're looking at it hard enough, you can make something out of a little bit of everything, honestly. But
yeah, he's
able to say, oh, here's these are a crowd of people, and this is a church or whatever. Here's a deity. You can do all that kind of stuff, and if you believe hard enough in it, you can see it too. But
that's amazing. I wish this rock book library still existed. I really do. Because I mean,
that'd be a cool thing to have in your possession, like a letter or anything from him. That'd be a cool collectible piece. Yeah.
That would be absolutely amazing, especially getting the person who discovered this, like actually writing to you and explaining, specifically to you what this specific rock actually means and deciphering it for you. Like that's absolutely amazing, especially for the time period it was in, because that, first of all, it's only become very recent that we send rocks in the mail that have a lot of meaning. So to do it in that time period, I'm sure people were looking at it like, what in the world are you doing? But that's so freaking cool. I love it. I wish it were still a thing. I'd really love to have one, but whoever does have it, keep it. Like that is yours. That is priceless. It is amazing. So do we hear any more about the Tyros influence on Earth, or is the Tyros kind of like the guardian angel?
The Tyros don't really play a whole lot into it. The Tyros is kind of there, but the story's mainly about these Diros, because I think they're the ones that are mainly influencing things. The Tyros, I couldn't really describe. I couldn't really find a hard description of whether they were good or bad, because they did help that woman, according to her account, escape the underground caverns. They seem to have some higher intelligence over the Diros. But I don't know if like the Diros are working under their command, because they are harvesting meat, so these things have to eat somehow. So I couldn't really find any real, I guess, description of what these Tyros, what their involvement is.
That would make sense for like the cattle mutilations that like we find and see too. If it would be Diros, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I have so many questions, so little answers. And wow, I would love to get my hands on one of these Amazing Stories magazines, or even the Fantastic Stories magazine. Just with one of them, with one of Richard Shaver's stories on them. I'm sure you can find them online.
I'm sure. Like I said, you can find. I looked on Amazon. You can find like they have like archives. You can find these archive books on Amazon where it's like Amazing Stories, best of 1942 or whatever and stuff. You can find those. Nice. But yeah, I'd like to have a nice original copy of Amazing Stories, but I feel like they probably go for a lot.
Yeah, they might.
It'd be cool.
I don't know. Deidre hooks us up though. She's awesome. So, or like if you feel so inclined, if one of our listeners has one and would like to share, or possibly give it as a gift, I mean, that would be nice. That would be very nice. However, like you don't have to. But Ty, you knocked that out of the park.
I wouldn't complain.
I would be so excited. Oh my gosh, I'd cry. I would cry. I'd cry.
Well, that's not saying much. Yeah, that's not really saying much. You cry about everything. So
not spilled milk though. I'll cry over spilled coffee, but not over spilled milk. Ty, you knocked that out of the park. Oh my gosh,
thank you.
That's amazing. So, that's absolutely amazing. I feel like we're definitely going to, bring back Mr. Shaver when we talk a little bit this summer as well. When we have our so, because we will be covering Atlantis. I'm very excited for that. So he's definitely going to come back for that. I can't wait to see what I find in that. That's going to be super exciting. This is awesome. Yeah, you definitely, I feel like you're right. If you're in into conspiracies, and like you need to know who Richard Shaver is. I agree with you.
He's a fantastic, interesting guy to read about. But there is a lot of controversy though with whether or not Ray Palmer was just exploiting a man with mental illness.
Yeah,
I think that is a very interesting side of this story, because it's some wild stuff he's coming up with, and Ray Palmer and the Amazing Stories had no problem just putting him out there on like the national stage.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of discussions to be had about exploiting people's mental health, but to Richard Shaver, these are real things.
Yeah.
But a lot of people believe a lot of things, so it's hard to say.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, and I mean, if it all does end up just attributing to this guy was mentally ill, and of course we won't find that out for a long time. We would have to see the Deros and the Tiros in order to be like, this guy he knows what he's talking about. But that would be sad, because people with mental illness, like, they do get exploited from time to time, even today.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a big thing today with like YouTube and stuff. People, there's a lot of people in there that have mental issues that are being put out for people's entertainment.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, even Britney Spears, like, she was going through a heck of a lot, and I mean, they just, oh man, terrible things.
That is a really good example. Yeah, that's a really good example.
Oh yeah,
but that's kind of what was happening back in the 40s, I think, with Richard Shaver. So
interesting, and I mean, with times being tough like that too. Like, I mean, I don't want to say they'd have a reason to do it, but I mean, there was a lot of people who were hurting to make money at that point in time, and it was
for sure.
It was a rough period in our economic history. However, that still doesn't give you the excuse to exploit someone.
I was trying to find if like I could see anywhere how much Richard Shaver got paid, so I couldn't really find anything like if he was getting compensated or what his compensation was for these Shaver mysteries, because like I said, they were a huge success for Amazing Stories. But I don't know how much of that was being shared with Richard Shaver himself.
God, I hope it wasn't like, Richie, we're going to let you tell your stories. Okay.
Yeah.
I really hope it wasn't like that. But without knowing, you can't excuse it. So
yeah, you
or
can.
Dismiss it.
It's hard to tell.
I hope it wasn't.
I hope he was getting compensated, but I don't know.
Absolutely. That is an amazing story. I'm proud of you for that one. That's absolutely amazing.
I was very happy with it.
You have every single right to be happy with that. That is amazing. Yeah, we're definitely he's probably gonna be a name that I'm not even gonna say probably, he is gonna be a name that we're gonna bring back up here in later episodes.
Good.
And I'm super excited.
Everyone should look into Richard Shaver a little more. Educate yourself on him. But he seems pretty good. Now I did mention there was like I'm finally made to the episode without talking about white supremacists. But his stuff actually does has in later years became prominent on QAnon.
Oh wow!
QAnon, yeah, they have actually kind of adopted a bunch of his stuff.
Abducted might be the right term.
Abducted, maybe. Yeah, we're talking about QAnon. Yeah, they have actually taken a lot of his stuff, like the subterranean tunnels, the idea of Deros. I'm sure they made Deros in the,
they made
a lot more. Yeah, they made them in some group of people. I'm not going to say who, but I'm sure they've drawn conclusions. That's what they do. But yeah, they've taken a lot of those ideas that these underground beings are manipulating all the things that happen bad to them. But yeah, so that's the only part that touches on that kind of stuff, and it wasn't anything of his doing. It was just people.
It was people. Yeah, it was people latching on, trying to blame. Trying to be like, see, it's not the same group we're talking about, but it's a group like it. Like, that's what that was. Let's be for real. No, in my opinion, abducted is the right term for that.
Oh, yeah. So, but there we have it. Richard Shaver. Next, here in a couple weeks to wrap up Bailey's series on Dimensions of Parallel Universes. We have Glitch in the Matrix Encounters. Is that what we're doing? Or is that what it's titled?
That's what we're calling it. Yep. Maybe not glitch in the matrix, probably glitch in the universe encounters, just to keep it
Glitch in
all
the universe encounters.
glitch in the
Okay.
universe. Yeah, guys,
Okay.
this is how we name our episodes, right here in front of you. That way you know what you're looking for. So anyway, so that's going to come out here in a couple weeks. I'm super excited for that one because I've talked
It's gonna
about
be
it.
fun.
I've talked about it here, and then here out. Those encounters are what inspired me to look deeper into like the science and how these things can be created. Because
Right.
that's how my mind goes. Is like I hear a thing and then I'm like, how is that possible? Well, now I have to know. So
Yep.
I'm super excited. That's going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna start working on mine. Get mine put together for that episode because it will be an encounter style episode like we do for our specials. So hopefully you guys enjoy that because it should be pretty good. And then we're rolling off into the summer and getting things ready for that. But yeah, we got a lot of cool things planned here for the rest of the year on Cult Talk Conspiracy, Cult Talk Net in general.
Oh,
a lot of cool stuff coming up. Yeah, thank you guys for listening here. And hopefully this broadened your mind a little bit about who Richard Shaver was. If you don't know who he was, definitely look into him. Check out Amazing Stories at Cover Art because it's really beautiful stuff. Say what you will about their exploitation of a man with mental illness, but they did some really nice covers on their magazines. But I think that pretty much does it. I think we've done a pretty good job of answering this question of who is Richard Shaver.
You've answered it and then some, Ty. You did fabulous.
I hope
this
so.
is awesome.
I hope so. But I think there we have it. That's it.
That is it. Where can they find us, Ty?
They can find us at Cult Talk Net. That's across the board: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the things. If you guys have anything to add to this, you can, of course, add it into the comments of our YouTube video. We put a YouTube video up the same day we release these on the podcast platforms. So you can put it in the comments there so you have a way to correspond. Instagram is a great way to do that as well. We're pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. So if you have anything you want to add or DM us or anything, those are the places to do it. Check out Cult of Campbell on Mondays, Cult of Lore every other Thursday or Friday, depending on what Eric's schedule looks like. They do a really good job of putting these really cool, fully graphic YouTube videos up on youtube.com/culttalknet. So you check that out on podcast platforms and on YouTube.
Yeah.
The YouTube videos definitely are a heightened experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Check it out that way.
And if you want to see what I'm talking about with the machine gods, go look at their machine gods video that they covered.
Yeah.
And you'll see where I'm making that comparison. So, but yeah, awesome shows. Love them.
All right. But until next time, I've been Ty.
I've been Bailey.
Question everything.
Everything.